Seems to work.
There's maybe someone who's technically
Done. It's working.
It's working. I've just checked on the YouTube channel.
Oh, good. Okay, shall we admit everyone who's waiting? And Claire, if you wanted to, you could turn your camera off. And would participants joining please turn their camera off? Unless they're one of the candidates, please. Thank you.
David, you need to mute your speaker so that we don't hear.
Okay. All right, I think we're ready to start. Welcome to this General Secretary Hustings hosted by Southampton University UCU branch. I'm David Bretherton, the president of the local branch, and I'm chairing today. We're joined by the 4 candidates for General Secretary, members of Southampton University UCU branch and members of UCU branches in the Southern region. And we're also live streaming this event on YouTube. A few words about the format of today's hustings. So shortly, the candidates will be making opening statements of 5 minutes each. We'll then move on to questions pre-selected from those submitted by members of Southampton University UCU. And then at around 2 p.m, we'll take a break of 10 minutes. We will then resume and take questions from the virtual room. For all questions, the candidates will be allowed 2 minutes to answer, and in limited circumstances, we're going to allow the candidates an additional 1 minute right of reply. At the end of the hustings, the candidates will give closing statements of 3 minutes each. The order of the candidates' opening statements was decided by my mom pulling their names out of a UCU beanie last week, and we'll rotate this order as we move through the questions as we get to the closing statements, and that rotation will work by us taking the person who went first last time, putting them at the end, and everyone else moving up. We'll be opening the Zoom chat for the second half of the meeting to allow audience members to submit questions to the candidates. I won't be reading the chat as it's beyond my capabilities to chair and read at the same time, but we have a moderator who will be selecting questions and forwarding them on to me to ask. Note that we've disabled the comment feature and the live chat feature in YouTube as we don't have the person power to moderate these. Closed captions are enabled in Zoom, so if you want to turn them on, you need to click on the show captions button. If you've got it full screen, that might be hidden behind 3 dots. Also, if you're joining us on Zoom, please can you turn your camera off unless you're one of the candidates. Finally, I want to remind everyone to please observe UCU's rules on respectful and non-discriminatory conduct. So I'm very pleased to introduce the 4 candidates in alphabetical order. Vicky Blake works at the University of Leeds and has served the union in a number of roles, including as president. Jo Grady has a position at the University of Sheffield, although presently, as you'll know, she's serving as UCU's General Secretary. Ewan McGaughey works at King's College London and has served as branch president there for 3 years. And Saira Weiner works at Liverpool John Moores University and has served the union in a number of roles, including as a member of the National Executive Committee. The order of the opening statements as determined by the UCU beanie is Vicky, Ewan, Jo, and then Sarah. So Vicky, if you're ready, please could we have your opening statement?
Hello, can I just check that my sound is okay before I start?
Perfect.
Great. So hello, and thank you for having me. I'm Vicky. I work in widening participation at the University of Leeds, where I'm branch secretary and I'm a former president there. I'm a former UK president of UCU, and I'm standing because we need substantial changes to build the serious and confident union all our members need across post-16 education. UCU was my lifeline. I joined in 2009 after organising locally as a casualised postgrad, and like many, I spent almost a decade juggling insecure and exploitative contracts. And UCU gave me back my dignity and developed my political education. Organising with other members to address obstacles in our workplaces led me to join the Anti-Casualisation Committee, and I was elected its chair in 2012 and was their chair for 5 years. We worked hard across FE, HE, adult and community education and prison education, and across the membership, deliberately working across factions. And this approach installed job security as a pillar of UCU's industrial claims at local and sectoral levels. So I believe divisive infighting does not have to define our union. I will foster constructive, deliberative discussion and equip members and committees with reliable information and support. The creation of supportive spaces for dialogue is vital for us to build density and engagement. And as General Secretary, I will listen to critical voices and engage with members that may not, in fact, will not always agree. We can't erase differences, but we can take disagreement as a starting point for working towards stronger positions. And rather than disregarding some voices, we should seek to engage more members and develop insights through open and informed deliberation. My manifesto is on my website, which is vickyblakeucu.uk, and each section begins with a summary of key pledges representing practical and important changes we need. These are inspired by conversations I've had with members across our union and 15 years of working hard and listening to members. I place strong focus on organising and working together for the fair pay and working conditions that our whole sector deserves. I know firsthand and respect the tireless work of branch committees and activists, and I will support this organising as General Secretary. Branches must be understood as our union's fundamental building blocks, rather than outposts expected to disseminate messages from above. I will work with members to uphold and strengthen our union democracy and to improve our legal provision and member awareness. And this will include improving legal support in potential test cases and establishing a dedicated mechanism to support migrant members needing urgent specialist advice. I will also launch an equalities research project with our elected equality committees to regularly review and improve our own union practices, alongside gathering the data and analyses that we need to drive action for equity in our workplaces. I'll invest in organising hubs to complement regional committees and facilitate more horizontal working, cross-branch and cross-sector coordination, including our push for binding sectoral bargaining in England FE. I commit to expanding in-house research provision for reliable and timely information and analysis to improve our confidence in making decisions, developing strategies, challenging the poor financial decisions of our employers and restructuring, and especially in post-92 universities. This will equip branches to build effective campaigns and pursue both local and sectoral collective bargaining. I believe social media can be useful, but can't be seen as the primary tool to build a branch. And I will also prioritise repairing the relationship between UCU as an employer with our recognised staff union. Unite have raised issues around systemic racism, health and safety, well-being and hybrid working. And as a trade union employer, we should model excellent practice. And this kind of conflict isn't in anyone's interest. We know from our own workplaces how damaging aggressive or defensive responses to critical feedback can be. We face unprecedented challenges, including climate emergency and AI, and both are already significantly impacting how we live and work. I'm proud to be a founding member and co-chair of the Climate and Ecological Emergency Committee and to be involved in organising this year's hybrid Cradle to Grave Education Conference as Education Committee Chair. I want to finish by saying I believe in UCU and the better future for post-16 education we can secure. We can build our union with the resources and capacity to proactively meet these challenges, understanding how they impact us and our sector. Expanding our research capacity and creating new and better spaces for dialogue and collaboration will be central to this. The GS role is an enormous responsibility with obligations to every member, and the changes I put forward will better represent members, re-energise our democracy, and better coordinate our campaigning and bargaining to most effect, to win together. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Ewan, you're next, please. Could we have your statement?
Thanks so much, David. Thank you to Claire, all the other organisers at Southampton University, and of course, thanks to the other candidates for taking part in these hustings, and everyone here for giving up a couple of hours to listen to all of us. My name is Ewan McGaughey. I work at King's College London as a law professor. For those of you who don't know me, I specialise in labour law, pensions. I taught anti-discrimination law my whole career, and the regulation of public services. And I'm asking for your vote for General Secretary because I believe that we have to do so much better as a union and not only rebuild UCU, but also transform the future of higher education and further education in this country. So I worked in casual jobs since I was 14 years old. Like many people here, I had my early career as an academic on successive part-time fixed-term contracts, having to reapply for my job every year, not knowing how I was always going to afford the rent or bills. And so it's so important to me that we use the union to transform people's lives at work. I've worked my whole career as well with the labour movement. I've worked for numerous unions with numerous political parties, including TUC, the ETUC, the Labour Party, the Bernie Sanders campaign, and the 2020 presidential election. And so I can bring a wealth of experience to make sure that we have an effective union. When I was branch president at King's College London UCU, starting in 2020 up until 2023, we did 2 ballots. And we negotiated a series of deals which got us the highest London weighting in the capital for a university, got among the highest paid parental leave levels in the UK, got the first written collective agreement in over a decade, got more staff elected to the council. We reversed at least 3 discriminatory dismissals, 2, believe it or not, when people applied for maternity leave and were told that they were redundant. We got our colleagues' jobs back, and also one over disability applying for reasonable adjustments and then told that they were fired for incapacity. We got our colleagues' jobs back, and we did it through a strategy of collective action. We went from losing ballots to getting among the highest ballot turnouts in the country, legal action where we needed to, bringing tribunal cases and then settling in the shadow of the law, and targeted publicity. And so we've got to have a new strategy at UCU to actually win for members. And we've also got to be honest. We've got to tell the truth about what's happened since 2019. I've got a lot of respect for all the other candidates and the work that they've done, but we've got to be honest about the fact that there has been 13% pay cuts, record real terms pay cuts since 2019 alone, a failed aggregate ballot in 2023 because the centre is not doing simple coordination work with branches to get out the vote. We've had membership falling off a cliff. We've got 6,000 fewer members at UCU since 2019 alone, which costs about 2 million quid every single year in lost membership dues. We've got UCU as an employer in dispute with its own staff over pay, because currently the leadership of UCU is withholding reductions in USS contributions from staff. That's 3.6% pay. All of this will change on day one if you give me your vote as General Secretary. And so my plan is set out on my website, www.unmg.uk. You can see the whole platform there. But I just want to give you a quick summary of the goals. And I think it's so important that we not only have a strategy to win, but we have absolutely clear and measurable goals, which we've been lacking. So number one, we've got to reverse the real terms pay cuts since 2019 and going back to restoring real pay in 2009. There should be at least a 20% pay rise, and we need to get a multi-year deal like we had before 2010 in order to achieve it if we need. We do it through sectoral bargaining, and we also do it through pattern bargaining where we need to. We've got to have workplace democracy at the centre of what we do as UCU. This can be a nationwide deal, it can be local deals, but we've got to have governing bodies not choosing themselves, including at universities like Southampton and in fact all over the south of England, but majority elected by staff. We've got to have structural reform to end the gender, the race and the disability pay gaps. One of the big things is unequal parenting responsibility, so at least 26 weeks for everyone. 26 paid parental leave weeks for everyone. And we've got to have written collective agreements in every university. I'll rebuild UCU from day one, and we'll have a better run union, and we are going to win again if you vote. But I've got to ask you, we've got to get turnout. We've got to get more than the 20.5% of people that voted at the last General Secretary election. So thanks very much for listening, and I'm looking forward to a great discussion.
Great, thank you very much, Ewan. And Joe, if we could have your candidate statement.
Thank you, Chair, and hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm just going to speak really from the heart. This election campaign, it needs to be a vehicle to reset UCU. I think it needs to reset our standards of debate. It needs to reset our strategies, and it needs to reset our priorities. And as candidates, and this is what today is all about, we are going to be questioned, challenged, criticised where justified and fair, and I think given an opportunity to set out how we believe UCU should be led. And I think, you know, we shouldn't be shying away from robust debate as long as it is done in a comradely fashion. You know, all of the candidates here are standing to lead one of the most powerful trade unions in the UK. So our ideas, our principles, the election pacts that we might be making, or records that we have had whilst in office, all of these things need to be scrutinised, and you deserve to have answers to legitimate questions. I'm here and I'm making a case that I am the person that you should re-elect as General Secretary. I'm also here to say that sometimes when you are General Secretary, whether that's for the unity of the union or to rightly support collective decisions, your voice does become or can become blurred. During this campaign, it's really the first time since I was elected in 2019 where I am free to set out exactly what I think about a wide range of issues. And for some of you, it might be the first time that you've heard them. I have produced a detailed, a coherent, and a deliverable manifesto. I know from my first-hand experience on the job what is required to get things done. I shared it early. If you haven't had a look at it yet, please do. But I shared it because I know you will want to challenge, critique, and question it. It's why I'm here today. Crucially, if you go onto my website, it's gradyforgs.com, you'll find across the top like a number of selections. In that place, you will find industrial strategy documents for both higher and further education. We can list all of the things that we want. We can list all of the injustices that exist in education. We know they are long, but what we need and what members have been crying out for is a plan, is a clear plan and a strategy as to how we are going to build density, build for ballots and action, but bring everybody with us. And I'm being really clear about this in this campaign, that if you vote for me, you are voting for a clear and winning strategy across the union. I know the last 4 years have been tough. They've been tough for a whole range of reasons. We've had one of the most right-wing government for decades. Things are about to get really nasty, I think, in the UK as we head towards a general election. We have had anti-union employers. We've had a global COVID pandemic. We continue to have a hostile media. And I'm not here today or at any point during this election to say I have got everything right. We haven't got everything right. Against the backdrop I've just outlined, who would? No union has come through this period unscathed. But what we have done in this period is we have won 2 UK-wide HE ballots. We have won a historic victory in USS. And if you haven't had your paycheck yet and you're a USS employer, you will have had a contribution reduction and a pay uplift this month. We've won more ballots and got more settlements in FE, one in prison education, one in adult education. We have massively increased the union's profile, and that is a good thing. We've increased our standing in the movement, and we've delivered a transformative equality agenda. We've done more, but I've only got 5 minutes, so I'm going to stop there. But I am excited to be here. I'm excited to take your questions. I'm really pleased to be having this debate. I'm really genuinely in my happy spot when I'm with members, when we're listening, engaging with what you want, feeding that back, and hopefully changing the union and some of the structures that we've had so we reflect what people want better. I'm going to end there, but I'm looking forward to the debate. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Jo. And lastly, Sarah, please.
Hi, my name's Saira Weiner, and thank you very much for coming to this hustings and listening to all of us. I think that what you'll find is I represent something different to the other candidates here. I'm branch secretary at Liverpool John Moores University and have been for some years, lead negotiator. I'm also the vice chair of Northwest Region Committee, becoming chair at the next AGM, and I'm the candidate supported by UCU Left. I don't think this is really time for business as usual. The world is in flames. The cost of living crisis means that many of our members are living on poverty wages, and it's absolutely not possible, I think, to carry on as normal while Gaza burns. Not for me, anyway. We have a moral obligation, I think, to do whatever we can to stop the genocide, and this will take collective action. And I think that is the responsibility of trade unions like ours. I applaud some of the materials that our current General Secretary has put out. I do think we need to go further, and I'll come back to that later. I think I'm the candidate that reflects the need for urgency in the union, is committed to making our union fit for purpose. And this means creating a union that is genuinely led by leaders. When you look at our democratic structures, they absolutely need to be embraced and expanded, learning from grassroots activists who have found new methods of organisation and discussion, like the Corona Contract and the UCU Solidarity Movement. But most importantly, I'll say that again, most importantly, the GS and elected bodies for the GS, the elected body, must absolutely abide by the democratic decisions made by union members. This is the most important element of leadership. In higher education, you know, like millions of ordinary people in the UK, and in fact in further education as well, UCU and adult education and prisons, UCU members have faced enormous challenges over the last few years. They have responded amazingly with great courage and determination. In higher education, tens of thousands have campaigned, taken extensive strike action, and held a marking and assessment boycott this summer. Our action has won a huge victory on USS, but I'm in a post-92 branch. We have won absolutely nothing. The dynamism, I believe, of members has not been matched by our leadership. And you can see that by looking that from early 2023, the current General Secretary told us that this wasn't the time to fight. We should stand down all our action until greater union density was achieved. But our members again and again rejected waiting, and I believe we're right to do so. There wouldn't have been victory in USS without action. But instead of embracing the growing democratic involvement in the UCU, I believe our General Secretary has constantly ignored and undermined the decisions of members and their democratic bodies. Her stop-start strategy eventually led to a loss of confidence, and I believe the failed ballot over the forfeits in the autumn. And I don't believe it's a coincidence that following that failed ballot, our universities have now responded with waves of cuts and redundancies and attacks on the post-92 contract and the arts and humanities in particular. In further education, members in colleges have called for aggregated ballots and collective action like we've seen in higher education. But the chance to win back the national paying conditions in FEs, I believe, has been squandered by the UCU leadership. And this can't go on. It can't go on. In future, members must control their own disputes and democratic decisions must be upheld. We cannot have anyone being left behind. We cannot have some institutions getting pay rises, members in institutions getting pay rises, and the others not, and then claim that as a victory. Similarly, in adult education, there are cuts to provisions. They live on extremely low wages and in very precarious circumstances. And our prison educators are crying out for additional health and safety measures and reductions in workload. I think, as well as looking out inwards at our union, we can't ignore the huge blip. Sorry, is that time? Did you say?
5 minutes. If you could finish the point you're on, and then we'll move on.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just finish on Gaza. We have to speak out for Gaza. We have to defend refugees and migrant workers, oppose sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and I believe defending academic freedom means also defending it from people who would manipulate it to shield their bigotry. Please vote for me, Saira for gs.wordpress.com for my manifesto. Thank you, and sorry for going over.
No problem. Great. Thank you, Saira. Great. And thank you to all the candidates for their very inspiring and passionate opening statements. We're going to move on to question 1. The order to answer this question is going to be Ewan, Joe, Saira, then Vicky. I'll read out the question just for the benefit of the audience. The questions for the first half were submitted by Southampton UCU members, and they were selected by the moderators and myself, and we sent them to the candidates yesterday so that they had time to give considered answers. So question 1 is, do you have any plans to lobby and shame vice-chancellors into returning deducted pay to those who went on strike over pensions? University managers did not do enough to end the dispute quickly, and universities and managers personally benefit from lower pension contributions because of UCU's action. This was submitted by Lorraine Williams on behalf of members who had raised this matter with her. So Ewan first, please, and you have 2 minutes.
Great question. Thank you very much, Lorraine, and all the members for sending in questions. So my answer is yes, absolutely. We need to go after vice-chancellors, universities that do disproportionate wage cuts when people take good faith action in a trade dispute. So any kind of wage theft, any kind of proportionate deductions, any kind of punitive deductions must be challenged in court. And when this was happening last year, we had labour law professors, human rights professors around the country saying we've got to do something against the universities that are doing 100% wage deductions. Now, at King's College London, we negotiated to make sure that we had amongst the lowest deductions for taking lawful strike action in the country, but we've got to have challenges in court because there is at that point nothing to lose. And I'm afraid that the incumbent General Secretary refused to take any action at all. But it's not just that there's been no legal action over punitive wage deductions. There was no action to defend members during COVID when people were being threatened with the sack for not coming into work before there was a vaccine. 10 branches independently crowdfunded advice on corporate manslaughter to make sure that universities didn't subject people to detriment. There's been no legal action, no court cases since 2019, even on direct discrimination up and down the country that we see all the time. I mentioned 3 cases at King's, and there was no legal action on the pension fund. Now, the pension fund has been mentioned, and I'm sure it'll get brought up a few times. The reason that we got the pension back was the combination of collective action, legal action that me and Professor Neil Davies at UCL crowdfunded with over 6,000 members to sue the pension directors for their reckless cuts and to divest fossil fuels. We got the pension back as we got to the Court of Appeal. We lost on procedure, but we established an incredibly important precedent that beneficiaries had the right to take legal action against the directors. And it's so important.
That is your 2 minutes, if you could finish the point.
It's so important that we give all the reductions in pension contributions back to staff, first at UCU, as is currently being refused to do, so that we can bargain for every penny of pension contribution reductions to come back to staff right across the country.
Great, thank you for that. Joe, I can see you've got your hand up to presumably you're wanting to respond. If I could give you a minute right of reply. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I didn't want to do the right of replies, but there's just so many inaccuracies there. They've got to be corrected. We are involved in legal action now on MAB deductions, and we've actually been involved in them before the recent MAB. We literally launched a judicial review against the government during COVID and were successful in getting them to close campuses. On USS, we didn't back it because despite taking lots of legal opinions, there was no legal merits. Unlike you, Ewan, we didn't chase a case that was already always going to lose and waste £750,000 doing so.
Great, thank you. We just for the audience, we decided not to let people respond to rights of reply. So unfortunately, I'm not going to let Ewan respond to that, though I'm sure he'd want to, and I'm sure he would have a response to it. But I'm going to let Joe answer the question now. So Joe, you have 2 minutes to answer the question about, just go back to the question. It was about whether or not we should be lobbying and shaming VCs to return pay that was deducted due to the pensions strikes. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is a good question. And obviously the union, I think over the last 4 years has been quite good at putting VCs in the spotlight, in putting them under pressure. And I think it is a legitimate tactic. I do think though, in answer to the direct question, yes, we should have that campaign, but I think there does need to be some realism about the prospects of them paying it back. During the negotiations, actually, in the pay dispute, this was a huge sticking point. Vice chancellors wanted to defend their right to dock pay, even though it was clear, especially in the case of USS, that they were in the wrong. Doesn't mean we shouldn't campaign on it. In fact, next week, we actually have a parliamentary select committee. UCU will be going face-to-face with UCIA. I'll be there giving evidence. Based on your question, Lorraine, I'm actually going to ask our research department to produce the exact figures for me. I'm even going to ask our campaigns team to see if there's a way we can involve you to be saying what happened in your branch, what the figure was, and produce extra pressure. We have been trying to embed an approach in UCU, and we did build some research capacity, and there's now a strategic research unit for this kind of stuff. They're going to be, over the next few months and weeks, talking to branches about how you can use this information more. So hopefully that speaks to your broader question. If I've got time, the one thing I do just want to say is, pushing for the USF money is important, but we do need to remember that pre-92s won't benefit from that. UCU as an employer has made sure that our staff benefit from our employer savings. We are saying USS employers should do the same, but we do need a strategic approach for everybody in the sector, whether it's pre or post 92. Thanks.
Thank you. Sarah.
Hello, yeah. Just 1 second. I do apologise. I think my concern is that so far UCU has repeatedly claimed it would support members bringing cases against employers for illegal deductions. I mean, I'm in a post 92, so you know, we have to remember this is beyond people who won during the US and the USS deductions. But there's been a promise to dispute and fight cases of illegal deductions from, if you remember, the 2-hour strike some time ago to the deductions for the MAB, and actually none of materialise. And if there is work going on, then I would have hoped that members would know about that, because it's a question that I get in my branch all the time. I think we should be prepared to bring cases. You know, everything has got a risk, and lawyers always say, oh, there's a risk attached, but there's a risk attached to walking over the road, as risk assessments show, if we're taking our students out or whatever. Queen Mary University in London are in the process of doing so. Returning deductions should be part of any settlement agreements, I think, with UCIA. Non-members tend to join us when they see us taking real action to protect them and the sector. And I don't think we should shy away from industrial action in case it puts them off. You can't build a union in a vacuum or in the abstract. You can't build a union with recruitment pushes instead of action. And that action also needs to include legal action.
Thank you, Sarah. And Vicky.
Thank you. So I want to emphasise the importance of political pressure and sustained organising here. We need to know and use our legal options well to support these, but it will take more than a legal remedy. I think it's worth people also being aware of Queen Mary's UCU's Community Legal Project and an event that's coming up in spring, and it would be worth looking that up. I also want to salute Southampton's dispute that you've lodged relating to a refusal to take grievances during MAB. And I think that is another important way of using our voice to put that pressure on VCs and employers, but they rarely, if ever, acknowledge that we were right. The fight for USS shouldn't have been necessary, it shouldn't have taken so long, and that we won is a real victory for collective action, sustained, and a vindication of our position. It should also illustrate to employers the value of resolving disputes with workers, but we know from the pay and conditions for fights dispute that this is not the attitude that prevails on the employer's side. I've sat opposite employers' representatives in both disputes in 2019, 2020, and I've seen the impact that a strong turnout in industrial action can have. And in USS, I truly believe it was the combined and sustained might and will of our members backing those painstaking negotiations which shifted the tide. It wasn't won overnight or through a clever trick, it was that sustained work to shift the basis of negotiation and shift the narrative. Employers do understand the language of leverage. So while I would remind employers at every opportunity we were right, I'm afraid I don't think there's any sense in which the majority of VCs will admit to feeling any shame. You can't shame the shameless. And they know their punitive responses to strikes and local MABs at some branches in 2022 were aggressive, and they were deliberately so. So I believe we need to be better prepared in future to preempt and challenge our employers' use of punitive tactics, and to do this via being prepared in legal and industrial terms. The ground may be a little bit better worn in USS, but we will need to remain vigilant in every dispute. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky, and thank you everyone for your answers. So we'll move on to the second question. The order to answer this question will be Joe, Sarah, Vicky, and then Ewan. I'll read the question out. So, what proposals do you have for ensuring that UCU makes strategically coherent decisions that are representative of members' views and that avoid the damaging internal conflicts and contradictions that we have seen in the Four Fights dispute? And that was submitted anonymously. Joe, if you're ready, your 2 minutes start now.
Well, Anonymous has got right to the heart of it, hasn't they? And I think it's why, despite being the incumbent, I am asking people to cast their vote for me if they want change. Members are calling for a proper strategy and a genuine say in our decision-making processes. And I am saying I 100% have wanted this for a while, and I'm offering this as part of my re-election. I'm making it really clear, if you vote for me, you are voting for the full introduction of my manifesto and industrial strategy papers. You can see them on the website. We cannot secure, these strike mandates and then immediately see the Higher Education Committee calling, large amounts of action without any real engagement with members on the ground, leaving them confused and sometimes betrayed. And I really don't think that more committees or more conferences are the answers. These spaces are inaccessible. Sometimes they're not welcoming environments. What members have called for in large numbers, and they asked for this in the survey we conducted last year, is a plan. They want to move beyond these methods. So I'm saying if re-elected, I'll immediately move to a mass engagement exercise with members. Part of this campaign is part of that. We need a way out of the current political way of doing business in UCU. We need a clear, coherent, detailed plan. If I am re-elected, that will be my number one priority. I want everyone to benefit from the wins that we have had, rather than us circling the drain on the losses that we've had.
Thank you. Sarah, if you're ready.
Yeah, thank you. As General Secretary, I would absolutely commit, and that's a commitment I'm making now and a promise I will make, to carry out democratic decisions of our prime decision-making bodies, UCU Congress and higher education sector and further education sector conferences. It is there that our democratic debate happens, and that should be fed into from branches. everyone should feel comfortable going to their branch. And I think if people felt very much that their idea, what they decided was going to be listened to and was going to be carried out, then they would feel much happier getting involved. That's certainly what people say to me. I don't think we should be afraid of debate or disagreement. That's what democracy is about. Sharing ideas and listening to those of others is how we make collective decisions. And it also means taking the action our members vote for. It really doesn't do much to unite the union when a decision is made and then it's called off at the behest of the General Secretary and a couple of officers. There are ways that we can make these decisions, such as strike committees and branch delegates meetings formulated properly, which are in rule. I think it's strategically incoherent to ballot members and not use the ballot results for months, to launch action and then pause it, to delay ballots resulting in only token action being taken, to call action when half our branches are on reading weeks or vacation. Internal conflicts occur when our members vote for one thing and UCU does the opposite. Let's have proper democracy in our union. I will represent everybody by doing what members tell me to do through the democratic structures. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Vicky, if you're ready, your 2 minutes start now.
Thank you. I believe in us and our collective ability, despite recent setbacks, to make real progress in fights as we have in USS. I think a good plan is one we can all get behind, and that means it's one that we've co-created through well-functioning, accessible democratic spaces. And this requires better communications, better information and more space for dialogue, remembering that branch officers need good and early communication to be able to hold nuanced discussions in branches, as well as those discussions happening at the UK level. So effective strategy is rooted in what's happening in the ground. I don't believe it's one that is chosen without deliberation or enacted top down. I'll work with committees and members to develop the mechanisms and spaces to express views, weigh up evidence and listen to other positions in less formal settings ahead of formal decision making. And the organising hubs I've described will facilitate this and complement the work of regional committees, which are often undervalued, I think. I committed to a review of our democratic structures and to supporting and resourcing this work, which must be done with members and our elected committees to improve UCU's democratic accountability and transparency. My track record is one of working across divides, whether they're political or about differences in how we experience the workplace. And I don't believe those differences can or should be erased, but we do need to use our strongly held diverse opinions as a basis for building and honing stronger collective positions. As General Secretary, my role will always be to bring people together to find solutions rather than sowing further division. And I will make sure that I am visible and accountable, and I will pledge to use digital tools to supplement but not sidestep our existing democratic structures. I'll use my platform to ensure members and reps are fully informed of analysis and decision making, because I believe better decisions are made when well-informed members and reps can fully participate and feel welcome to engage. So we need to refocus on what we're fighting for: better conditions for all, who we're up against an intransigent employer body, and by improving how we work, we can take the best of our ideas and work together to combine and refine them into a winning strategy and unite behind it with everyone feeling heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. And Ewan, your answer, please, when you're ready.
Great question again, and thanks to the anonymous person for asking it. So in order to have a coherent strategy, we need to first have coherent goals. So reverse the real terms pay cuts, over 20% since 2009, workplace democracy, equality, security, through structural reform. We've got to be absolutely crystal clear about what concrete measurable goals there are behind the four fights, and that's often not been the case. In fact, a lot of people can't really remember what the four things are. We've got to be absolutely clear about the kind of structural reforms that we want behind ending the pay gap. So at least 26 weeks paid parental leave, because we know that unequal parenting, unequal childcare responsibility is one of the major causes behind the gender pay gap. And we've got to move away for the gender, race and disability pay gaps for from biased markets determining wages in hiring, promotion, and pay decisions. We've got to move to positive actions so that when universities, faculties, colleges have big pay gaps, new hires, new promotions contribute to lowering the pay gaps, not exacerbating them. So we've got to have clear, identifiable metrics. Second, we've got to empower branches. So there's not just a lack of an overall national strategy, there is a total lack of branches being coordinated to do what I call before pattern bargaining. You try to get the same goals rolled out at every single branch possible. Workplace democracy, workloads as well, ending casualization. And the final thing is that we've got to change the way that we talk. We've got to restore respect, and a lot of the infighting that we have between the General Secretary and the NEC amongst itself, that's got to change through having positive goals. That's what I found at my branch, King's College London, when we had complete clarity about the goals that we had, and we were succeeding, then there was less infighting. And finally, Joe, I got to say that the plan that you've got is the same plan you had in 2022. It begins with building membership density, but you've lost 6,000 members since 2019.
I am going to let Joe respond to that, but very briefly, please.
It is important because Ewan's been quoting this figure, but one of the things we've been doing since 2019 is removing standard free members from our overall membership because they don't pay any fees, and either transferring them onto proper membership, as in like fee paying because they've transferred out of that period or they've left the union. So you keep quoting that figure as if it's a failure, but it's actually been clearing up the database to make sure that our numbers are representative.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ewan, for your answer. I think we've got time for question 3. So this is, how important is it to you that the aims of industrial action are defined narrowly so that members know exactly what they are striking for? And this is from Trouter Mayer. And the order of this question is Sarah, Vicky, Ewan, and then Joe.
Oh, I've just lost my page again, just typically. I think hang on, what was the question again? The barriers, is it?
Would you like me to read it again?
Oh yeah, the aims of industrial action being defined narrowly. Yeah, sorry, my dog is now also crying. So
I'm happy to start your 2 minutes from now. Okay.
Brilliant, thank you. I think in the old days we used to fight over headline pay, and that's, to be honest, what the employers prefer. Then they can claim to be skin or say we're being greedy or whatever they want to do. But as a result, as a union, of listening to members, we recognise the need to include issues of pay, equality, casualisation and workload in our pay claims. And I believe we were absolutely right to do that. So I don't think that narrow definition is necessarily a good thing if we're just talking about defining pay. I think it's right to say that we want an end to casualised contracts, and by that the view is to end all casualised contracts, not just the involuntary. I can't remember what it's called, so my brain has gone a little bit. I would not want to see us returning to just a fight over headline pay. It would be a trail, I think, of our women and black members, our casualised, mostly young members, although there are some members who have been casualised for over 20 years, and everyone with an intolerable workload. You know, pay isn't just the thing we're fighting for. We're fighting for a great deal of things, and I think that adherence to the national contract for post-92 universities is a start in many ways. We do need to continue to fight for a broader range of issues, and I disagree with you, and I think that our members haven't forgotten what the 4 fights are. That's it.
Thank you,
Thank
Sarah.
you.
Vicky, you're next. And Ewan's got your hand up. Did you want very briefly to respond to that? I don't think it was a personal critic.
No, but I think it's important that I do respond. I mean, of course, you're right, Sarah, that like a lot of members do very well remember what the four fights are. But I mean, then there's a large group of members that don't always turn up to picket lines, and it's really it's not just that. It's sometimes difficult to remember the four things. It's also what are the metrics behind the four fights that we are actually bargaining for, and so we need to be much more ambitious on pay, reversing the real terms pay cut since 2009. We've got.
I'm just gonna finish you there because I think you can address this in when you get to answer the question.
No problem.
Because I think we're drifting off to areas from responding to the direct point that Sarah put. Sorry, I'm trying to be as fair as I can. I appreciate it's tricky to try and be balanced. Vicky, if you could answer the question. So the question again was, how important is it to you that the aims of industrial action are defined narrowly so that members know exactly what they are striking for? And it's 2 minutes.
Thank you. As an experienced negotiator and branch officer in regular communication with members on the ground, I believe that our watchword needs to be clarity over narrowness. FE and HU sector conferences set aims of industrial action for implementation by the HUC and FEC, and there are mechanisms to feed into that as we go through a dispute. We must unite around common, clearly articulated and comprehensive goals, remembering that we want to lift up all our members and to secure better minimum standards for all. Some of our members cannot wait for change. So when objectives seem unclear, that's a failure of communication, not an excess of ambition. We should be ambitious for our members and make sure that members are clear about what we want, why, how we intend to win, and how they can have their democratic and well-informed say. So I've committed to creating spaces for more open dialogue ahead of decision-making and improving communications with members and branches, including channels for reports from negotiation teams. We need to make a strong case in negotiations and in public, and we can do that. In 2019-20, when I chaired UCU's negotiation teams, backed by strong industrial action, we broke new ground in four fights. We got working conditions, including equality and job security, onto the formal negotiating table alongside pay for the first time. We made it clear that we were there to negotiate, but employers must also move. So we must always maximise the leverage that we have, especially through the threat and carrying out of industrial action. But making demands too small or the ask too narrow risks having nowhere to move. So then less of a chance of a decent offer to members. So I think we need responsive, broader mechanisms operating in live disputes. That's why I've committed to implement recent policy on developing strike committees, producing recommendations to establish them so that they increase democratic participation, but without limiting our ability to build and exercise maximal leverage. And also everything that I've described already in terms of that more horizontal way of working through organising hubs, getting better information through a research unit and creating that space for dialogue, I think is going to be really important here. But I don't think the answer is to narrow our ambitions. I think it's to be realistic about what negotiations are and what they mean. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. And Ewan, if you're ready, your 2 minutes on this question start now.
So, as I was saying, we absolutely need to do so many things. It's pay, it's equality, it's security, it's democracy in the workplace. But it is true that we've got to be crystal clear about what we can achieve at national level. And then also, if things aren't going that well at national level, we should be rolling out and getting as many gains as possible that we can at local level. So pay is absolutely for nationwide sectoral collective bargaining with our other union partners. Equality, I want to see at least 26 weeks paid parental leave across the country, but we can also make huge gains with extra paid parental leave at the local level, as we did at King's when we had our strike ballots, and by the way, succeeded in negotiations without actually having to take action last year. For job security and ending casualisation, there's a mixture of legal action that we can take against 0 hours contracts and sham self-employment, none of which has happened since 2019. There hasn't been, again, a single court case actually decided in a judgment by UCU, despite the rampant violations of workers' rights across the country. We can make real gains at local level there, and also with workload deals, even if we don't get it in a national deal. But I want to see as much as we can do at sectoral level. And if you go to my website, UNMG, .uk, you will see for every item, every goal that I list, there is a how we do it section, because I can see how we've done it in branches. We see success at branches all across the country. And so we've got to match local branch success up at the national level and not have this national mess.
Thank you, Ewan. And Joe, if you are ready, your 2 minutes on this question start now.
I am, thank you. Another outstanding question. This is exactly what we should be debating, and also great chairing, David. I think if you've read my HE strategy paper that's on the website, gradyforgs.com, you will know this issue is important to me. I think there are two answers to this question, but a common theme, regardless of which answer you favour, is that we need a clear strategy. So I think the two schools of thoughts about forfeights are, they're all equally important and any future dispute must include all four. And then there's a second school of thought, which is we need a tighter claim so that we can focus all our efforts to win one aspect, such as pay. And that is, for what it's worth, what most other unions that have been involved in pay disputes have done. I think this is a discussion for the union. We had the survey last year, which gave some views on it. I would say that adopting the second approach doesn't mean you give up on the others. You can explore them through other routes, such as local bargaining, that can strengthen our UK action. I mainly think, though, whether you subscribe to one or two, we need a plan. You know, if you subscribe to position one, you have to recognise these are rightly ambitious demands, and we need an equally ambitious plan to achieve them. That isn't going to happen through minor tweaks, but following the same sort of processes and strategies we have. We've had a problem. We've been on a ballot merry-go-round. It's made it impossible to follow a plan, to speak to members about a plan, because we've been fighting on all fronts with an employer that wants to, you know, concede on none of them. I'm clear that next time a plan has to take members with us every step of the way. It has to be based on consulting, campaigning, recruiting, balloting, delivering an agreement. I think, you know, in moments of dispute, members trust us. They need a proper plan to deliver. And if we're going to build towards big action and ask everyone to get involved, we need to make sure that people know what they are voting for, that they understand what they need to win before we're thrown into a dispute. And we never get that in UCU because we go through ballots too quickly to ever have a proper period of consolidation.
Thank you, Joe. That is the first half done. We will have a break now for about 10 minutes. I think we'll start again at 2:10, and that's when we'll be taking questions from the audience. Can I ask Claire if you could enable the chat in Zoom so that people could put their questions in there, so that maybe we're able to select a question in time for the start of the second half. And if you'd like to put a question, please, can you phrase it in a way that it is addressed to all four candidates, because it will be put to all four candidates, and we'll select ones trying to get a variety of topics, and also based on which themes seem to have most support in the room to be asked, if I haven't phrased that very well, but I hope you understand what I mean. And of course, please be courteous. We'll start again at 2:10. Unfortunately, there's no entertainment, so it will just be blank screens, but we'll see you at 2:10. Thank you. Great, thank you. I'll just wait for Saira and Vicky to rejoin us. Just a word for everyone then. I'm quite new to Zoom. We don't use it at Southampton, but you need to make sure the questions, please, can you make sure the questions go in the general chat so that everyone can see them. If you've got a question that you'd like to ask anonymously, or you're having trouble finding it, please can you send it by direct message to Eleanor Jones, who is one of the moderators for the meeting. I have had a really nice message though that came through to me that I think the person that asked it wanted to remain anonymous. So I'm going to start with that one while Eleanor finds some other questions. Let me just go back. Yeah, okay. So this is question 4. So the order for this will be Vicky, Ewan, Joe, and Saira. And the question is this, it's a nice conciliatory one, I think. Assuming that you become General Secretary, have you considered harnessing the strengths of any or all of the other candidates and their plans? And if yes, would you like to give an example? And so that's going to go to Vicky first. Sorry, you don't have much thinking time, but if you're ready, I'll read the question again and then.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So, assuming that you become General Secretary, have you considered harnessing the strengths of any or all of the other candidates and their plans? And if yes, could you think of an example? Thank you. So, Vicky, when you're ready.
Thank you. It is a really good question. I think that the positive thing that you can say about all 4 of us is how passionate we are about our union and how much we want our union to succeed. So absolutely, I think we do all have strengths. I think, you know, we do need to be paying more attention to how we use our legal strategy. I think we do need to be making sure that we're in touch with activists on the ground who are doing a lot of hard work. And I think we do need to open up our participation in our democracy. I think the reason that I'm asking you for a first preference vote is because I believe I have the experience to do this in a way that brings people together, and I have a track record of doing that. I think it's really important that we make space for everyone and that we have a General Secretary who is able to work with everyone and to make sure that voices are all heard in the formation of that strategy. So, you know, there's lots of I could say about all of our strengths. I've been in this union for nearly 15 years, and I've worked really hard ever since I joined, organising at all different levels, and I know it really well. And I think that the key to our success will be combining all of our skills, not just the General Secretary, that's the skills and expertise across our whole membership, of our whole staff, making sure that there are proper development pathways for everyone within UCU, and that we get to that more cohesive and forward-thinking place together. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. And Ewan's disappeared. Ewan, are you still with us? I think what we'll do just for this question, if we could.
He's rejoining.
Okay. What we'll do while he rejoins, if we go to Joe, and then we'll go back to Ewan, if that's okay, Joe.
Yep.
So if you're ready, your 2 minutes start now.
Thanks. It is a nice question. And I think that, you know, part of being in a union is recognizing that, you know, lots of people bring different experience, and, you know, somebody new can have the experience of why they weren't in the union or what's brought them to the union. So I think, you know, there's that in favor of everyone. My answer to the question is, what I would seek to do is harness the strengths of every candidate that is running. They're running because they clearly care. Everyone here has a different skill set, but also every member of the union. I think that's the only way that we can win. We've got a lot of these hustings to go together, so I'm sure we'll at least get to know each other a lot better if we don't already. And I think what I would like to do is, you know, if re-elected, invite all 3 to talk, see how they could, you know, work more collectively, maybe the skills that they're talking about or the ideas that they've got, what that could bring. I'd be really up for doing that, actually. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Joe. Ewan, you had technical troubles or something, so we're going to go back to you.
My computer just decided to pack in, like great timing, right? So, so sorry, I just missed the question.
Okay, so the question, it was the first question for the second half, and it's a really nice question, I think. Assuming you become the General Secretary, have you considered harnessing the strengths of any or all of the other candidates and their plans? And if yes, could you give an example?
And shall I go first, or do Vicky or Sarah want to?
Yeah,
Okay. Great question. Look, if I do persuade you to give me your first preference to everyone here in the meeting, then I absolutely think that we need to work together. You'll hear me in the next hour giving a lot of criticism to the way things have been run in the last 5 years, but I don't think for a second that we should exclude any voices. And I say that from experience running the King's College London branch, where we have a huge variety of different views. We increased membership by 20% while I was branch president, because we had a coherent message, we repeated it. And even if there's disagreements, what I found is if we have clear goals, we have a clear strategy, and we're focused on success, and we're getting success incrementally, then you get less of the fighting. But so for instance, Joe, you and I first met just before you were General Secretary. We've talked a number of times. One of the first things I would do is have a very thorough conversation about what the difficulties are, because you've got a tremendous amount of experience from this last 4 years. Vicky, the same as president. I think Vicky's also a great diplomat. You can see it from the way that everything that Vicky says comes across. Sarah, I think that you're running for the NEC as well. And so, if I win, you and everybody else on the NEC, whatever faction, we have to all work together. We're not like the US Congress in UCU, or at least we shouldn't. There aren't sort of incommensurable ideological divides that we can't get over. And so I believe very strongly that everybody needs to work together for common goals and success.
Thank you, Ewan. And Sarah, your 2 minutes starting now, if you're ready.
Hi. I think that despite my, whatever I believe in, I think we have to listen to everybody in the union, and I would welcome, working with the other candidates, including, of course, Joe, who's got a load of experience as being General Secretary. And, with everybody here, we agree on many, many things. And to be honest, it's really industrial strategy that we disagree on. I think that everyone's got their strengths. Vicky's, been president, and was a good president. And Ewan's legal action is really, was really useful, and it'd be very useful to get support from him. And of course, Joe would remain a very important voice in the union. But having said that, every member of the union has to have a voice and to have that voice heard. We do need open spaces for people to talk between each other, and to have arguments and disagreements and discussions. That's what democracy is about. And I would work with anybody and everybody in the union by being a Democrat.
You see left person is that?
Thank you. Someone's mic is on, I think.
Yeah.
So great. Thank you, Sarah. So question 5, the order for answers in this question will be Ewan, Joe, Sarah, and Vicky. And I've got the question, and it's from Marion Chrome, and it's: how should UCU be expressing solidarity with Gaza? Will you call for a boycott of, for example, academic collaborations with certain Israeli universities, or, for example, a boycott of accepting defense funding? I'll read that again just because it's just to give everyone a little bit more thinking time. So how should UCU be expressing solidarity with Gaza? Will you call for a boycott of, for example, academic collaborations with certain Israeli universities, or, for example, a boycott of accepting defense funding? And so that's Ewan first, please.
Look, this is a really important question. And of course, within our union, we've got a big diversity of views on lots of issues. But of course, the desperately sad, tragic ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict is one of those at the heart. Now, my response is this: it's not enough to just call for a ceasefire. We need to have a lot more to get peace in the region. There needs to be a two-state solution. The war crimes that have been committed are appalling, and we need to round up the people that are responsible, and they need to be put on a fair trial before convicted if found guilty. We've obviously got the International Court of Justice decision coming out probably tomorrow. And you know, I just think if Israel bombing Gaza to smithereens, if people in the Netanyahu government think that this is going to create peace or is going to make it any better, they're completely wrong. People in Israel, of course, are not really behind this appalling war anymore. And on the specific question of boycott, my understanding is that the current UCU position, as it has been for a while, is that BDS motions are not actionable. What we need to do, however, is we need to have an objectively framed human rights policy so that every country that violates human rights and international law is subjected to the same policies by UCU in terms of our collaboration and who we cooperate with. So I hope that answers the question, and I think it's a really important one. As a labour movement, we've got to be committed to human rights, international law, and democracy everywhere.
Thank you, Ewan. Joe, you're next.
Thank you. Before I start, I think it's really important for us to acknowledge the sheer amounts of people that have died, the suffering that's happened. You know, we have thousands upon thousands of Palestinian people who've died. We've obviously had people who were killed in the Hamas massacre. We have people that are displaced. We have hostages that are still in captivity. The situation is dire. UCU, I hope everyone in this meeting is proud, was the first union to put out a statement, was the union to speak at these events that have been happening. We have a whole section on our website of things that you can do, depending on, you know, how active you can be and what options are available to you, from participating in, you know, cancel your Barclays account to ways in which you can pressure your university. I'm going to focus on the last one because I know there are branches here that aren't USS branches. But USS, we have been putting significant pressure over the past 3 months for USS to stop investing in military weapons, particularly those that are being used by Israel. One of the pressure points that we're going to be asking branches to do soon is to lobby your universities. Universities will have a massive role to play in whether or not there's a tipping point in USS. So yes, of course, we should be expressing solidarity, you know, with multiple nations where there is an occupation, and particularly here where we know that there is genocide happening. But there are multiple ways in which people can get involved. I'm proud that our union has been leading from the front on this. I'm proud, you know, that we've got a long history of doing this, but at this moment in time, we really are giving people lots of tools and mechanisms to do that. And, you know, in addition to sort of protesting the government's boycott bill, I'll end it there, but I think my position on this is clear and I'm really proud of what we're currently doing.
Thank you, Joe. Sarah, if you're ready, your 2 minutes.
Yeah, I agree with much of what Joe has said. I stand in absolute solidarity with Gaza. As a university, you know, in our workplace and our universities, and our colleges, we have to defend the right for people to speak out on Palestine. I think that's something that the union could put more emphasis on, and I would definitely call for a boycott of anything to do with Israel and the arms trade. I would call absolutely for divestment in anything to do with the arms trade and Israel. And I also would call for, you know, ongoing sanctions. Laws are made, but they're wrong. If you look at what happened over Ukraine when, you know, Russia invaded, immediately the government instigated a boycott. Now, whether I think that was right or wrong at this stage doesn't really matter, but it's absolutely disgusting that, you know, they're picking on this in particular. And I think it's around stuff around the climate crisis as well, they're particularly looking at. And I think also I would call, and I think I'll do this as soon as I possibly could, if elected, for everyone to take action in their workplaces. I would urge everybody here to take part in the workplace day of action called by a number of organisations on the 7th of February. There's some great resources. I'd really like those hard copy of those resources sent out to branches. That's a request to Joe, please. And we need to show, you know, we can't stand up and ignore a genocide. We're going to be judged by this. And I think we have to see it in the levels. We do not live in ordinary times. We have to take action.
Thank you, Sarah. And Vicky, if you're ready, your 2 minutes start now.
Thank you. I oppose the occupation and the genocide, and I want to see an urgent ceasefire, the end to violence, and the safe return of every hostage. And I think it's very important that we hear and support our Palestinian members and students, and also support members who are being targeted by employers or the government for opposing the occupation. I also want to note that many Jews in Israel are also being persecuted for not supporting the excess of violence. The horrific situation in Gaza is a failure of humanity. It can be attributed to a right-wing Israeli government led by a prime minister that most Israelis don't support, that is committing what most people looking on would call genocide. Hostages are not, in fact, Netanyahu's focus. And the cause of this situation is also the domination of Gaza by the brutal and chauvinistic terroristic group as well. So it's a really difficult situation where many in our union have called rightly for and demanded action to end the totally unjustifiable violence. There is nothing that can justify what is being done to Gaza or to Palestine more broadly. Our role as UCU, as a union, I think, is to be a voice that seeks to influence the UK government as much as we can to bring about peace and pursue a two-state solution. It's also to encourage the development of the tools that we need to overcome decades of senseless violence. And in doing that, we need to make sure that we're protecting freedom of speech and academic freedom so that we and others around the world can contribute to the free debate that's going to be essential to making progress here. In terms of divestment, we recently were sent some really good questions from Divest USS about this and other issues of divestment. And I think we need to use all levers that we have to pressure USS. We obviously can't take strike action against USS, but we can use all avenues to put pressure on them politically, and we can put pressure industrially on our employers to join us in that call as well. I know that we have processes to discuss
Vicky,
what to do. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry to cut you off on this important matter, but that is your 2 minutes. Thank you very much for that response. Question 6, it'll be taken in the following order. So Joe, Sarah, Vicky, and then Ewan. Apologies to Sally Pello, who's put the question. It was a bit more wordy than my dyslexic brain could cope with reading it in a live stream. So one of the moderators has kindly abridged it for me. But the question is, what skills with dealing with the media and other external groups will you bring to the role? So what skills with dealing with the media and other external groups will you bring to the role? And that goes to Joe first, please.
Thank you. I think this is a really, really crucial question. And it has been a crash course, you know, for me as a General Secretary since 2019. But I'm really proud to say, whether it is Question Time, select committees, BBC, Sky, ITV. I was even on this morning during COVID talking about the impact of lockdown, Channel 5, Channel 4. We have really increased the union's media profile, but we have done so on the basis of, you know, I would say straight talking and in complete control of the facts. It has been, I think, a really impressive period for our union. I feel completely comfortable in any of those arenas. As I said, we've got select committee next week. You can watch it. They live stream these things. We'll be up against UCIA. I'm really looking forward to being able to deliver some home truths about the way in which they manage the sector and what that's meant for our members. I hope that you feel secure and like someone is standing up for you when you see me on the media or representing you in Parliament. I think it is really important. When I took office in 2019, I wanted UCU members to see their General Secretary being out there, speaking for them, advocating for them, representing them and defending them. And I think based on that record, based on the last few years, I have done that relentlessly for UCU members and will continue to do so right across everybody that we represent.
Thank you, Jo. So Saira next, if you're ready.
Yeah, I mean, I think for anyone who takes over the General Secretary role, of course, it's going to be a crash course for us. But, I have conducted interviews with the media. I've been active politically for many years. I've been on television, mostly local television, because let's face it, not everyone gets the opportunity to do that. But I think it's really important to be straight talking and to actually tell truth to power. There is no way, I would represent our members' views and decisions, and I would do that with absolute pride and clarity. And I want, stand in hopefully the tradition of other trade union leaders who do that. It's one of those things, you gain experience by having the experience, and I'm absolutely confident that I would be able to do this with panache and with conviction. And I think that's all you can really say about what you do. I mean, diplomacy at times is needed, but I think straight talking is undervalued. And I am without doubt a straight talker.
Thank you, Saira. Vicky, if you're ready. Great, your 2 minutes starts now.
Thank you. This is such a great question. I have a whole section of my manifesto I'd really like to ask you to read in response to this, which is the 6th section. But to take the question now, I think it's really important that we focus on relationship building in all sorts of different ways. We need to build relationships at every level of governance across the UK and across our Crown dependencies. So I'm talking local government, municipal government, and I'm talking devolved governments, and I'm talking UK government. And that means being able to establish respectful relationships with political parties and to be able to use that space to drive forward our excellent policy agenda. And I want to improve our research provision within UCU to drive more of that excellent policy work, but also to bring more of our members into it. In terms of my experience with the media and talking to different groups, I have done a lot of media interviews. I did a lot before I was president, and I've done a lot during my time as president. But I would expect there to be a sensible handover with the outgoing GS and to talk closely with the team in UCU to look at how we would manage that. But I think I've done the Today programme, I've done lots of news interviews, I've done TV and radio. It's not that it's not nerve-wracking, because I think it is for most people, but I do feel confident with it, and I've worked quite hard on that over the last, I don't know, since 2017, how many years ago that is. I've worked with the Trade Union Coordinating Group, which is a group that brings together 11 trade unions, and through that I've directly contributed to early drafts of the Decarbonisation and Economic Strategy Bill. We've done environmental work and worked to respond to COVID-19 and the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill. I think that my day job, which sits at the nexus of further and higher education as a widening participation professional, helps me to understand and navigate that space in terms of education policy. And I see a lot of scope for us also working collaboratively and very positively with other unions. So an example I would give you of that is the need for a renewed and strong campaign to tackle the toxic regime of Ofsted. Thank you.
If you could just, great, thank you.
That's done, thank you.
Great, thank you. And Ewan, your 2 minutes, if you're ready, start now.
Yeah, thanks, David, and thanks for the question. Like other people here, I've done a lot of media work, both as my job as a professor of labour law and doing public service regulation, talking to BBC, ITV, Sky, NPR in America, Dutch national news, but also to student papers. And I found that during the strikes, one of the really important things was that we make sure we're absolutely clear with students that, these strikes are about your education. So students have had tripled tuition fees for home students, limitless fees for international students. They're paying more and more for university, but that money isn't going into their teaching. It's going into management bureaucracy and fancy buildings without caring about the people inside. So, I think that my track record on the media is, you can see some of it on YouTube if you hunt around. There's lots there, but also with external groups, I think it's really important that it's not just the General Secretary that has the job of communicating a strategy. And I think that our strategy has not always been communicated nearly as well as it needs to be. It's also about empowering branches and people at local level to do exactly the same thing. So there's a network of people who are progressive in the media that called Neon, that train people, and I'd want to get as many branch reps as involved in that if they want to do training. I also want to see, this is point 6 of my policy platform, not only that we boost our legal department, but we boost our branches' capacity with facility time to make sure that people are empowered to take tribunal cases to actually defend workers' rights, and also skills in negotiation with management to get written collective agreements at every single branch. So, we've got to engage absolutely with a lot of external groups, students, in courts, and with management, and that's what I'll do if elected.
Thank you, Ewan. So we're going to move to our final question. I think we've just got time to fit it in if the candidates would agree to keep their responses to 1 minute. I feel terrible doing it because it's one of the few questions we've had on post 92, but I do need to make sure we keep on time. So just a minute, please, candidates, for this question. And the order of answers will be Saira, Vicky, Ewan, and then Joe. And the question is from Xavier Gugan. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. What is your strategy for post-92 universities to get better workloads and higher salaries when many of these institutions are in financial difficulties? I'll repeat that. So what is your strategy for post-92 universities to get better workloads and higher salaries when many of these institutions are in financial difficulties? So a minute, starting with Saira, if you're ready.
Yeah, I really appreciate questions on post-92. Obviously, I work in a post-92 university. I think, first of all, many universities in post-92 claim poverty when they spent their money on disastrous vanity projects, such as what's happened at Brighton, and therefore using it as an excuse. I think we need you look at the salaries of chancellors, vice chancellors, etc. But I also think that we need to get together for a higher education sector conference, a special one, to actually decide what our strategy is going to be. At the moment, there isn't one, apart from leaving the branches to fight alone. I think that, we also need to do lots of work around protection of the post-92 contracts, which again we can see is being attacked at Brighton in particular, and I, one of the local universities in the south, and we need to
sorry to interrupt,
it.
Sarah. That is your minute.
Okay, thank you.
And if Vicky, if you're ready. Thank you.
So we're seeing redundancies, attacks on disciplines and course closures, and we're also seeing our own reps being targeted, when what we need is government support similar to what schools in the public sector are being offered. We need a campaign and we need dialogue, because while some post-92s are in a relatively secure position financially, others are on the brink as a result of the messed up competitive model. But it doesn't excuse poor management decision-making. So thinking about Sheffield Hallam and other places, we need to open the books and push for our expertise across our membership in finance to get hold of that, and let's talk about it with employers. I think it's important to recognise that TPS essentially is functioning as an additional tax on post-92s, and we need to do an awful lot of work to push for that, because at the moment the the increases are going to go straight to the Treasury. I'm trying to do this in minutes, really hard. We need to argue for the significance of all post-16 education providers to local and regional economies. You have a big employer, it's massively important for communities, and allowing them to fail makes zero sense. So please look at my manifesto for more that I have to say about anchor institutions. But I think that we need to take a political and industrial tack. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Ewan, next, if you're ready, please.
Yes, great question. First of all, on workloads, we've got to make sure that the governing bodies of universities are democratically elected, majority elected by staff, because what we see at universities everywhere, including post-92s, but it's actually worse in post-92s because there's a lower proportion of staff generally, is that you have people brought in from the outside who are appointed by each other on self-perpetuating governing bodies, and they come up with sort of pointless bureaucratic workloads for everyone, and that would be reduced if we had more democratic structures. Secondly, absolutely, Vicky's right. We've got a time bomb with TPS contributions going up, which is absolutely wrong, absolutely unnecessary. So as we move to a new government this year, this election, we need to make sure that we're absolutely clear that pension reform needs to happen at TPS just as much as it has at USS. And thirdly, when universities plead poverty and then they say they're going to cut the languages department or music department.
I'm sorry, Ewan, could you finish your sentence?
Thanks, David.
Sorry to interrupt. And then finally, Jo.
Thank you. 1 minute, big topic, so I'm going to be brief. On workload, I think this harks back to a question earlier about whether or not we need to think more strategically about our claims and about our disputes. Workload is a problem for everyone, but I know from speaking to members in post-92s, it is a serious issue. It's a workplace hazard. It's a health and safety issue. So I think we need to have a proper strategic conversation about that. On pay, we work with government, or not with this government, but we're hopefully going to be working with the next one. I think there's a serious issue about funding. I don't think it's fair to say all post-92s financially struggling and can't pay. We are due a financial review of the sector that will give us a proper picture as to how things are. So there's multiple strategies. Some could be industrial, political, but also campaigning.
Great, thank you very much. I don't think we've got time for any more questions, but the next question would have been, do you believe that UK HE is underfunded? And if so, what do you make of Vice-Chancellor's claims that at least some institutions can't afford to meet their demands? Perhaps you might agree to respond to that on Twitter or somewhere like that. We're going to move on to candidates' closing statements, and in the rotation we've got, the order is going to be Vicky, Ewan, Jo and Sarah, and we agreed 3 minutes for closing statements. So Vicky, if you're ready, could you give us your closing statement?
Thanks very much. We all have different levels of availability to participate in our union, but the one thing that you can always do is vote. So I hope you will vote for me, and I'm asking for your first preference, but whatever you do, please vote. This is your union. If you elect me, I promise that I will continue to work hard to represent and advocate for all members across adult and community education, prison education, further and higher education, and I will spend meaningful time with branches across all parts of the UK. We have to work together. We have to re-establish care as a central value to our union, and we can't allow this toxic and divisive culture that's been developing to continue. And that means providing better spaces for debate, and it means moving beyond social media spaces for debate. And I hope that you'll have time to look at my manifesto, which is on my website, to look at some of my ideas on that. I think being General Secretary is an honour and a massive responsibility, and it should be about collective work and amplifying the voices of members. I think it's really important that we re-emphasise branches as the building blocks of our union. And I know how much hard work branch committees do, and I want to make it easier for them, which is why I have proposed a more horizontal mode of organising through hubs to complement the work of regional offices and regional committees. And I also have made a commitment to work with members to help develop the networks that we have between members, including finding an appropriate way to reinstate and update the activist list that was pulled earlier this year. I know that those of you who do local work know that division is harmful. And I think we really need to have networking forums established where we can have some of those conversations out of the direct sight of our employers. And I noticed that was a question that was in the chat just now. In terms of me, I will do my utmost to represent you and fight for what matters to you. I will do everything I can to build the infrastructure that allows our union to succeed. I will make equality a practice to cement our commitments to equity and safety at the heart of our own practices and spaces as a union, as well as fighting really hard for members in all workplaces. I believe that the role of the GS is to amplify the members' voices and enact our democratic decisions of a union. I will give my all to UCU to strengthen our pursuit of what members deserve, and I will prioritise bridge building both within our union, working with members and committees to embed equality as that practice, alongside investing in expanding our data provision, gathering that data, doing the analysis that we need to drive action on pay, conditions, equality and equity in our workplaces, and to defend jobs. And as I said in answer to the last question, we need to argue for the significance of all post-16 education providers to local and regional economies. And that is a cornerstone of the manifesto that I've put on Vicky Blake, UCU.uk. Please have a read of my manifesto and please do vote. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Vicky. Ewan, if you're ready.
Thank you very much, David. And again, to everybody here for giving a couple of hours of their lives. And also going out and voting, because the ballots are going to come tomorrow. So I want to just reiterate that we've got to be honest with ourselves about the past 4.5 years, and we simply must change. We've got to reverse the real terms pay cuts. We've got to restore sectoral collective bargaining. We've got to go back against the 13% pay cuts that we've had since 2019 and restore pay from pre-2009. And if universities are facing financial trouble, or they say they are, then they need to reform by making sure that they get rid of wasteful bureaucratic management, stop the fancy building projects and invest in frontline staff who are doing the teaching, the research, and the professional services work. It's really not that hard. And with concrete, clear claims, pay going up, equality, including 26 weeks paid parental leave, written collective agreements to get job security in every university with clear claims, that's how we build membership. And we stop this decline of over 6,000 members leaving the union year on year since 2019. And we go up again. And by the way, it's even worse as a density picture because our sector is growing, but our members are going down. And we've got to have a legal department at UCU that actually fights for workers' rights. Now, if you cast your vote for me, I'd like to ask for your first preference. And if you do that, what you will see on day one is we will immediately move to ensure that all reduced USS contributions from the employer go straight into the pockets of staff as a model for every university. We'll make sure that we have the equality reforms at UCU so we can bargain for them everywhere else. We'll move to 100% clean energy, and we'll make sure that we are a model for the rest of the university sector, because we are doing it ourselves at UCU. The big thing is we've got to be positive about the future of education by putting forward a positive platform. So thanks so much for listening, and don't just vote yourselves, go out and get 10 friends, 10 colleagues to do it as well at least. And if you get your 10, get like 100. Thanks very much.
Great. Thank you, Ewan. And Joe, if you're ready, your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone who's attended. This has been a really good event. I wanted to go through these hustings and really not be scripted and speak from experience and from a clear belief that I do think I'm the best person to carry leading this union. I want to thank you for listening, both to my plans and, in the discussions, the strategies, and really have a proper discussion. I know that we can do better as a union, and I know that we need to do better. I also know that the majority of UCU members, especially in higher education, want that. They literally said so in their thousands in the survey that you took part in last year. But what I also know is that I am the candidate in this election who has set out a detailed change agenda and industrial strategies, that they have reach, that they have depth, and that they have detail. And if you go to Grady for gs.com, you can see them. We've had other discussions today, discussions about raising international causes. I have made sure that were the first union to speak out around Palestine. For those of you who pay more attention to the union's democratic meetings, I cleared up the mess after conference last year over the Russia and Ukraine motions. But there have been people in this hustings saying that they would win ballots. I am the only leader of UCU that has overseen UK-wide aggregate ballot wins. We have done these things together, but I think there also needs to be an acknowledgement when, the achievements have been made and that this has not just been a period of decline. People are celebrating this month, particularly in USS institutions. That doesn't mean that there isn't more to do, but we should be proud of the things that we have achieved. More member involvement, a strategy based on research, ending, toxic debating environments in our union. These are things that you'll be voting for if you vote for me. And I want to close by saying I do need your support to win this election, but to also change UCU in the way that I have outlined for the last 2 hours. So please vote for me, number one, and vote for the change that I've articulated and to keep taking our union forward.
Great. Thank you, Jo. And Sarah, if you're ready, your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. I do think the union is a place to debate, and it concerns me that debates, discussions and disagreements are called toxic, when actually most of them are just disagreements and things that we need to get through and to discuss. But I'll repeat some of what I said at the start. We live in a period of crisis. We can have no normality, and we have to rise to the challenge. There has been a victory for pre-92 universities who members who have got some money back in their pensions and more money in their pay packets, but we cannot leave anyone else behind. We're a union for all members. And to be honest, I don't believe that a union changes simply by changing your general secretary. I think strength lies in the rank and file members, and the problem is that the last 5 years show that it does matter who we vote for. We need a general secretary who's fought alongside the ordinary members of the union, who takes an average member's wage, which is what I pledge to do, rather than 110,000 plus, and who fights on the picket lines, etc., shares the courage and determination to win a post-16 education that staff and students can be proud of. And again, I think this is the most important thing, that we enact the decisions of our democratic bodies. And in this way, I will represent all members. So I believe that I'm the right choice for the General Secretary. We do need a different union, and you should vote for a General Secretary that will give you this. And just a spoiler, that's me. So please vote, whoever you vote for, and please use your vote wisely. Just to end on, I am asking for second preference votes to go to Vicky. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, for that. We're at the end of today's hustings. It just left to me now to thank all the candidates for joining us today, giving up their time to answer your questions. I hope you agree with me that we've got 4 very strong, very passionate and very dedicated union activists standing. Thank you to those candidates. Thank you to everyone in the audience. Thank you to the Southern Regional Office for their help with contacting branches in the region to get invites out. Thank you to everyone who sent questions. Apologies if we didn't get to your question. Thank you to Claire Lafol, Eleanor Jones, and Vesna Perisic, and for the rest of the branch exec for all their help behind the scenes with setting up the Zoom, the streaming, and helping to moderate the chat and choose the questions. Voting in the General Secretary election has now opened, and in fact, it's also an election for UCU officers, trustees, and NEC members. It's open already. It closes on the 1st of March. Please use your votes, and please think carefully about who you vote for and encourage others to vote too. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a very good evening. See you soon.